Hello, good day, and welcome back to Coding with Farrell. Now, today's video, it took me a while to make. Not to actually make the video, but more to do the research for the video. The title of this video says it also. No spoiler in this video, really. It is what it is. It's not a clickbait. It is that I tried running several llama models with 32 gigs of RAM, CPU only. They don't have a GPU in the computer. And I could not get any one of the models I tried with different context sizes, different parameter size to work with Roo Code. And so this video is me showing you that process of me trying to do this over the course of several weeks. I tried, but then I'll try and distill it by just redoing it really quickly, some of the things I've done so you can see. So there are tons of videos out there that says, oh, you can run Roo Code with local models. But maybe what they should say is you can Roo Code with local llama models if you have a GPU and or maybe if you have a whole lot more RAM that you can run larger models, because I couldn't get any of it to run, and I'll show you that. All right, with that said, let's jump in. So where am I going to start? What Roo Code is and other things like it are agents. So what is an agent? Well, we talk about large language model before you know what those are. But the agent is a piece of software that can use a LLM and tools. And so, which means that let's say I have a tool for creating a file. Now we're going to skip over what it is, just how that's implemented and all that stuff. We're just going to say there's a tool or there's a way for the LLM to be able to use this tool to create a file. So an agent is what would then talk to the LLM and say, hey, the user wants to do X, Y, and Z. The agent, the LLM would come back and say, yes, I need to create a file. And then the agent would take that instruction from the LLM. I'm skipping over a lot of details here. There's a way in which the LLM provides an output in such a way that the agent knows that the LLM wants to use a tool. Basically, it's a little JSON that says, here's the tool, here's the name of it, and these are the parameters for the tool. And then the agent would actually call the, use the tool, call out to this program that I have access to, and then like create the file. So that's basically what is happening, right? So Roo Code is really an agent. So the architect is an agent, all that stuff. And they're just using tools to do things like create files and stuff. And they have access to these tools that we enable. So what you're seeing on my screen here is, remember we talk about LLMs can be essentially optimized or fine-tuned for specific things. So we have the thinking ones. These are the ones that spend a lot of time reflecting and showing you the train of thought, tend to get better result. We have ones that are good at visions. Thing, looking at images and that sort of thing. And then before I go to tool, we look at the ones that do embeddings. We talked about embeddings before. And then the ones that can do tool calling, because if you remember what I said, if I asked the LLM to, let's say, create a file, it wouldn't know to create a file. But if I told it that it had a tool to create a file, then it can say, oh, use this particular tool, and these are the parameters for creating the file. For what we're doing then, we want models that support tool calling. And so while I was making this video doing the research, GPT open source came out, and the smallest model there is a 20 billion parameter model, but that is a little too big for what we're doing. DeepSeek R1's been out for a while, and you can go down the list and see. These are the popular ones, but of course you can sort it by newest and see some of the newest ones. Regardless of which model we want to use, does it have the context link that we need? So let's just do something real quick. Let's click on GPT, and we can see the context length here says that it's 128,000 tokens. That's awesome. Well, here's the thing. If we go to Ollama documentation, and you can get to the Ollama documentation by going to Ollama's main page, scrolling down and clicking on docs, and then it's going to take you here to the GitHub repo and the README file. And if you scroll all the way down to FAQ and then scroll down just a little bit more, it tells you that Ollama by default uses a 4,000 token window, right? Context window. And so even if the model, and it specifically says like the GPT open source model can support 8,000, it doesn't load it with that. So in order to tell Ollama that it should use like 8,000 token, a token context length, you'd have to start it with that. Another way you can do it is you can set it from within Ollama if you're using it interactively, or if you call it from the API, you can do that. So what does this mean for us? Well, oh, there's another thing. If you updated Ollama recently, you notice that they added a graphical interface, and there's this settings menu that comes up, but you can see that, you know, I've set mine to 8,000K. And so that means that essentially any model that's loaded through my local Ollama is going to be 8,000K. On my computer, I have 32 gigs of RAM, but I'm running a ton of things. Ollama, a whole bunch of other things, plus the things are just recording software. So it's going to, my computer is going to take a hit. So what I decided to do is use a second computer that I have. And so this second computer, let's do this. I'm going to pull this model, codellama 7B code. I'll explain later why I pulled this particular model, but you can see I already pulled it. And so let's take a look at this computer that I'm on. This computer, if I use NeoFetch, you can see I'm running Ubuntu, and it's been up for a while. And the important thing here is Intel i7. So this is not very, very new computer CPU, but it's relatively new. 8 cores and 4.5 gigs. I have about 32 gigs of RAM on this computer also. So I think that 32 gigs of RAM is pretty decent, and most individuals who are probably interested in running local models would have a decent computer, and probably 32 gigs of RAM is not unreasonable to say that they probably have. I cleared out everything, install Ubuntu, then install Ollama, and that's the only thing that's on this computer that's running. All right, and except me pulling the models that, you know, I have on here. Okay, so Ollama LS, these are some of the models I have. Okie dokie. So we just pulled codellama 7B code. So let's run that. So I pulled it. Let's run it because I want to show you something. So let's do run. And the other thing that I did was I logged into this machine and I'm running my watch command with -D for difference. And then I say watch the Ollama PS command. And you can see that the model I just ran loaded pretty quickly. It right now uses 6-point-something gigs, 100% CPU, but don't worry about that. I have 8 cores, and if we went and look, we'll see it's just a few cores that's being used. And notice that context length is 4K, just like Ollama said the default is. And of course, I can type like hi, and it's going to work. And notice that you know, the context length didn't change. Now, why type in hi to this model result in it spitting out a application is beyond me. I don't know why it's doing that, but let's just say hello. Wow. So this model is just about coding. It doesn't care what you say. It wants to talk about coding. So we'll see. But that's what it is. All right, so the model is running. But let's go to Roo Code. Go to the Roo Code documentation and look under setting up Ollama. You'll see that it tells you here are a list of models that they think work. And somebody tried this with Ollama. And how you do it? You pull down the model. We know to do that. I just did that. So I literally pull this very first one. So that is exactly why I pulled this model, is because I'm following Roo Code documentation. And then when I pull it, it says that, okay, you need to set the context size to at least 12K to get decent results, or 32K for ideal. And again, once you have the model running, you can set the parameters this way, and this is 32K. You can then save it to some name. Then you go to Roo Code and you do set up a provider, Ollama, and then you point it to the model you saved. Here's what I'm going to do. Let's do tree. And I simply copy the PRD from episode 12 or 11 they're all the same thing. And so now let's start up Codium and make sure that we have Roo Code configure. So I had that open. Let's go here and Ollama, but let's just use codellama. This is that model that I pull, and I have it configured for e-server reasoning. It doesn't matter what name you give it, but just know that once I have that configured, if we go here now and we configure our moods, every one of my mood is using that same thing, e-server reasoning. So I want to make it easy for Roo Code to just use the same model, therefore my computer doesn't have to worry about loading two different models, one for reasoning and one for coding, because the Roo Code documentation said that codellama is generally good for, general purpose tasks. So let's do done, and then I'm gonna go back here because I want to show you guys the pain I've been going through. Notice how this is a 4K context window length, right? And I type something here and it didn't change. But look what happened when I say hi from here. And I'm gonna use, let's say, the mode ask. It doesn't really matter too much. And I'm gonna enter this. And if we go here, notice how the context window changed to 16K. So Roo Code itself is passing to Ollama a context window that it wants, and it's using this. So in the request from Roo Code, it is passing an option to override the context window. So really and truly, you don't have to even worry about creating updating the model's parameter and saving it, because Roo Code is going to send whatever context window the length it wants anyway. And I know this because I've tried. I've saved models with 32K context length, and then if I'm using it for coding, Roo Code might set it to 132, and hence force the model to use a lot more memory and be really slow. But that is not all. If we actually go back to the here and we look, you can see it seems to be a little bit confused. Yeah, tools workshop, yeah, tools variable. Like, yeah, it's trying to use that model and it is responding, but repeating and doing the exact same thing over and over. So not good. So let's cancel this, terminate this, and let's now try and see if we can find another model, because clearly this model doesn't work well. Even saying something like, how are you? And that was just taking a long time. So what about some of the other models that Roo Code say you can use? So I tried pulling some of these smaller models and they don't exist. So this model doesn't exist in Ollama, and this model doesn't exist on the Ollama UI, or if you just try to pull them. So then I start trying some other models. So here is Quinn 2.5-Coder 32B. And if you go here and you do models, and then you do QWEN 2.5 coder, and you can see it's not only is it has coder, but it's also say it support tool calling. And so in the interest of space, why don't we just pull a fairly small model, like maybe this 7 billion parameter model. Now we could try even smaller, like this 3 billion parameter model. So let's try that. And I'll go here and I'll stop this because it seems to be hung up. I'll say bye, and let's sort of remove this. Let's stop it and let's remove it. I'll need it on my computer anyway. And so I'll do Ollama, and let's do pull, and let's pull this, and you can see I already have it. So let's run it, because once again I want to show you what's happening. So not run, but run. So it should load up pretty fast because it's a relatively small model, like 2 gigs or something. And so while that's loading, let's go to Roo Code and configure it to use this model. So we'll say use this Quinn 2.5 coder 32 billion parameter, and right there it's selected. Say save. I don't have to worry about any other modes because they're configured to use that profile. So this is taking a long time. Okay, that was taking too long, so I just decided to reboot the computer. So uptime, you can see it's just 3 minutes. So yeah, just rebooted it. We can do htop, and basically about 300 megs being used, but you can see CPU is basically not doing anything. So now if we run our codellama command, and this time we know this works. So what I'll do is follow the documentation for Roo Code, which says basically to load the model up, set the context size, and then save it. And so we'll do exactly that. So we load it, we'll set the context size, we'll save it, and we'll call this model QWEN 2.5-coder-32K for context window, and then size, and then it's the 3 billion parameter model. I'll save it. I'll say bye. And then I'll just go back to, we should already have this model here, but we want to change it to our 32K one, which is this guy. And so we say save. It's the same profile that we already have for everything else, all the modes. And now I say hi, and we see that it was loaded. It's the 32K context window one, so it's loaded pretty quickly. And let's go back here and see what happens. Now, if this works, what we can do is then ask it to see if it can create our application, and maybe we can get everything to run locally. Like I said, I've been having a lot of difficulty. I've tried a number of other models. I tried 5 for Quinn 2.5 by itself, Quinn 3. I've tried Gemma, different context sizes. And like I said, spoiler, and I mentioned this before, that unless you have a really, really beefy computer where you probably have a GPU, or you have like, I don't know, a lot of memory that you can load a much larger model, I could not get this to work. If you get this stuff to work, please let me know. I'd be really, really happy to find out that somebody got it working, which model you use, and what context when you get in the quality of the results. So remember, the first thing we want to see is we get something back, and then we can start evaluating how good it is. But notice, I'm not even getting anything back. Like, this is not working at all. And we know that it successfully loaded it up. And it has the context size that, Roo said that would work, and we still can't get it to work. So I'm not hopeful at all. So I'll kill that. So what's the takeaway? I don't think you need to do all this that you're doing in Roo Code, because it's going to send a context size that it thinks it needs to send. If we had used a model like, let's say, GPT, I think I used Quinn or something, and it sent a context size of 130 something K. No point in me showing you that, because we can't even get the smaller one to work. But yes, it sets whatever number it thinks it needs to set for the model. That's one. And two, I don't know where people are getting models that they say work with codellama and Roo in these size ranges, because I could not get any of these to work. That's it. I know this probably seemed like a waste of your time. Hopefully it wasn't, because I didn't lie about what we'll find. And hopefully, if you stuck to the end, you either see what you shouldn't try, or if you want to try it just to see if you get different results, you can let me know. I wouldn't blame you if you felt a little let down, hoping that your Roo Code could work with codellama. I was very much hoping that when I started using Roo Code and I started this investigation. Take care. See you in the next video. Stay safe. Bye.